It was Wednesday, and you know what that meant. AEW was back with Grand Slam Mexico. I don't know why they didn't just do this instead of Redemption, but we'll talk about that in a minute with my good buddy, the Dynamite Diamond himself, Mr. Parker Hamlet. Hello, my friend. How you doing?
What's up, Ace? Got my non-Olipop drink. Ready to talk about Dynamite. Interesting episode in Mexico. Got a hell of a day here on HGTV. Got to get through this Dynamite so we can get on to bigger and better things. I know you're on holiday yourself. I
hmm
been having kind of a chill day, enjoying the first half of it at least before I got to take care of some business. But yeah, I pleasantly surprised by this Dynamite. Dropped my review of it right before we hopped on. 3.5 stars. I thought this was pretty solid. I thought there's a lot of good stuff coming out of this Dynamite. I thought this was honestly better than Redemption. Dare to say, I thought this was hard. I thought there were better matches. I thought it was just a better crowd. I just thought this felt like what Redemption was supposed to be. So I'm ready to get into it.
Excellent stuff. One question before we do get into it. We'll talk about the Continental Tournament next week when we have more time because that's a different discussion. But there is another contract that is due up in a couple of months' time in AEW, and it's certainly one that perhaps isn't going to be renewed, and that is the one of Mr. Max Caster. The thing once they split up the Acclaimed, I really didn't see where they were going to go with the singles. I didn't think it would ever work out. They started to kind of bring them back, and then it kind of fell off a cliff again. And I think Caster's going to be out by October. Is that something you agree with?
Yeah, no doubt in my mind. I mean, that's just the guy who's too talented to not be on TV, and the fact that he's not, there's clearly some creative decisions going on here behind the scenes that or just him wanting a clean break, kind of letting the audience grow fond of him, so that whenever he does reappear somewhere else, he'll be kind of revitalized. And I think he's more charismatic on the mic than a lot of the guys at WWE have in developmental, to be honest with you. And I think that he's someone, if he shows up on WWE TV tomorrow, I think they can find a place for him. I think he, still got some stuff to work on in ring, but when it comes to the entire gimmick point of view, I think he's kind of a finished product in that regard. So I'm kind of on the same camp as you, where I really feel like this is trending towards clean separation, clean break from Caster and AW, which is a shame because the Acclaimed were just so over at one point. You could argue they should have never broken up. I kind of view them along the likes of like an Enzo and Cass, where they had their shtick, they were damn good at it, and then they were kind of asked to do something that they weren't really designed to do, and of course that led to where we are now. So seems like it's better for both parties if they get kind of a clean break, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely so. If they're not, especially if they're not going to be together anymore, it seems pointless. I know Bowens was with the Ops. I haven't seen them in a good minute, so I don't know what's going on there. So yeah, I think it's better. I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, funnily enough, on NXT this week, Robert Stone was saying that he was talking to someone that was a free agent, and I know Max Caster isn't technically a free agent till October. I know maybe people are talking to maybe that's Enzo coming into WWE Friday back to NXT. I don't know, but they could be if they long it out a couple of months, it could be for Max Caster. Who knows? We'll find out. Look, it's something to talk about. It's something for a discussion point for certain. But look, let's get into it. One thing Mexico does love, Adam Copeland. That is without a doubt. I don't think anyone in Mexico didn't like singing along. I think it's his debut in Mexico, would you believe? I think, or something along those lines. Considering he's 50 odd years old, that's a heck of a time to do a debut. The match with the Bucks, there was always going to be a bit of indecision between him and them and the Bucks, and it did happen. I mean, I think one thing Adam Copeland shouldn't be doing is a 619 anywhere near in future. After that dismal attempt of what they've done this week. So there was always going to do that. And it was always going to play a part in the finish, which it did. It allowed Mox to get the pin. Was this just going through the motions to get to All In with this?
That's kind of what it felt like. One thing about Grand Slam was that it felt a lot like a glorified house show, but probably in the way that WWE intended Saturday Night Main Event to feel like when they were in Brooklyn or wherever they were in New York when they did their whole Knicks collab. Obviously with AAA and everything WWE has going on with them, the fans are clamoring over there for more wrestling. We saw Roman Reigns and Rey Mysterio interact on Monday Night Raw. It seems like there's going to be some intermingling with those promotions there. So Mexico's hot right now, and you don't really blame Tony Khan for trying to strike while the iron is hot. And, I think that they made the most of this opportunity. I thought they had a pretty solid card. a lot of predictable finishes, but a lot of making use of the audience. Because if there's one thing about the Mexican audience right now is that just the energy is just contagious, and it seemed like all the performers were reinvigorated because of that. Someone we're going to talk about in a little while is Andrade, who was just treated like an absolute megastar. Someone else was able to come in and fulfill one of my predictions, might I add, and get some much deserved heat. And I'm going to talk about that. There's a couple other more interesting creative decisions on this card, but I thought this was a pretty solid match with Cope. Christian and all of them versus the Death Riders. I thought this was just a bunch of grizzled veterans kind of going at it, maybe going through the motions, doing some wrestling school type stuff, but nonetheless, it was a pleasure to see. Fun spots here and there. I thought this was probably one of the points of the card where I was entertained.
Yeah, probably one of the funniest spots was the low blow to Marina Shafir.
What the punt, and then yeah, they wouldn't elaborate on commentary. It was a really cheeky way to do it, but I actually put that in my notes too. I thought that was pretty clever.
It was. You mentioned the Roman Reigns thing. They are doing something, and it's on the same day as All In, not All In, All Out, AAA, and they're doing a tournament where the winner of that tournament on that night takes on Roman Reigns in Mexico, which is probably going to be El Grande Americano, but that will be so Roman Reigns is on that show so that he can just hold the title up or something stupid like that. That's what they're going to be doing. Bit of counter private. CM Punk definitely wrestling on that card. Mark my words, he will definitely be wrestling on that show. You mentioned Andrade. It was him. It was Tommaso Ciampa and Commander for being the number one in the Casino Gauntlet, which, unlike the Royal Rumble, is a good thing because the Casino Gauntlet can end at any time that you need it to be. All it takes is a pinfall or a submission to end it. So the fact that the winner of this is actually a good thing. This was really good. The Andrade picture followed by the dick pic from Ciampa was something to behold, that's for sure. But in terms of the action, I really loved it in this. But you mentioned that maybe where you're going with the heat side of it was Andrade was cutting that bilingual promo, and all of a sudden he was interrupted by the devil himself, MJF, with the Triple B, I might add, with the Triple B, even though he's not champ.
We were saying last week, what does Andrade do? And I said MJF was the natural choice. Didn't know if they were going to go in that direction 100%, but when I saw MJF's music hit and I saw the graphic, I was like, what better way to give Andrade a rub than having him intermingle with MJF, who obviously is looking past Andrade, but I don't think Andrade is going to make it that easy. Like, how does this affect the flow of things and maybe the main event picture to you?
I don't think it affects the flow. I think that was a natural. They were teasing it for some time anyway. It was part of the Don Callis family and that stuff. So it seems natural that it's going that way. Whether Andrade's still champion, right? He is a champion, isn't he? He won the championship the other week, right? Whether that goes on to MJF going for that, I don't think so. But I think it's fine. And I think Andrade's won. We said it last week, right? We was talking about Andrade being in the main event picture and perhaps he's found his place. So him and MJF mixing it up, fine. I don't think it affects the trajectory of any of those two. It'd be nice to have MJF away from the championship scene. I think we've got a decent enough stories to take us to the end of the year. Maybe, though, would you rule out MJF winning the Continental Classic? Not the Cup, the actual Continental Classic that normally happens.
He's never won it, correct?
Never been in it.
Yeah, exactly. So he's never been in it. I knew it was either he never won it, never been in it. I knew it was one of those. But I thought it was interesting that he did the whole real world champ thing Punk was doing on Collision years ago. Hoisting around Triple B. He was name dropping Ospreay. He was name dropping Omega. It seems as if he was going to be the foil, which is kind of why I asked that question. But like I said, I think this is a sense of MJF kind of looking past Andrade a little too soon. Clearly, Tony has an idea of where he wants to go with Andrade, and Andrade's garnering these natural reactions. So I hope this is a program that elevates these two, and hope MJF is kind of, given enough time and gives Andrade enough grace in order to, give him enough of a rub to where he's kind of seen in the same ranks as the two guys that MJF mentioned. And like you said, I want MJF kind of away from the title for just a little while, but it looks like it just may not be that easy.
So the interesting thing about this is I think MJF is vying to be number 2 in this gauntlet. That's where he wants to be. So I think he's going to have a match maybe next week. Now, assuming he gets there, Now, the winner of the gauntlet can cash in their opportunity at any time as long as they give Tony Khan 7 days notice. So what about this? Here's my view on it. This. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm throwing out one of my crazy pitches that I've done since you've come back on this show. MJF, the week before All In, says to Tony Khan, when I win this championship match, I am already giving you my 7 days. Thus, being then he wins that gauntlet, and because he wins the gauntlet, you get that shot. He's already given Tony Khan 7 days. He either joins that match with Omega and Ospreay, or he cashes in at the end of that match because he's already given Tony Khan his 7 days the week before.
I love it. I love it. And I think that it kind of puts MJF in the same conversations as like a Rollins, where like a lot of people don't really remember certain matches that Seth Rollins has. They more so remember the moments. And the moments are when he betrayed the Shield. The moments are when he cashed in, the heist of the century, or, the fake injury he did last year. So it's the moments. And MJF's already shown he's phenomenal in the ring like Rollins. I think he outworks Rollins in a lot of ways, but MJF needs more moments. We know he's the complete package, but you need something that kind of catapults him to like a new level of like villainry that we haven't really seen from him, which is hard considering the fact that he's pure evil. But nonetheless, I think that there is no reason for him to win this unless the plan is for him to cash in at the end of the event. After those two absolutely kill each other, you rob Ospreay of his celebration. He still gets the win. It obviously catapults a program between MJF and Ospreay, or MJF and Omega, whoever wins that match. But I mean, it would be MJF fashion for him to kind of clean up after that main event and kind of take the steam out of the building, don't you think? I think that's a great prediction.
It could do. I mean, it'd be one where he wouldn't tell us. What could happen is, remember when he come back and they done that video thing where Tony Khan left him a voicemail, basically said, "Oh, it was Punk was in the ring at the time." But that may have been before it all kicked off at All Out that year. MJF comes back at the end, didn't he? Right. So what it could do is Ospreay could be in the ring holding up the championship. The fucking fireworks go off and all that bullshit that normally happens. Lights go out. They play a thing on the television screen to say this is MJF like 7 days ago, giving Tony Khan that warning. As the lights come back on, MJF has got the bloody ring in his hand. Now's Ospreay with it. Bang, all over. And usually takes the steam right off. And actually then, MJF's got to get out of the arena, which is going to be equally as funny with a raucous 40-odd thousand English fans.
Yeah, you also know the Death Riders can be involved in that in any capacity. It's really dependent upon the way the match finishes. I wouldn't put it past MJF to do some, or Tony and MJF to book some hijinks like that. Ultimately, obviously, they're using kind of a Money in the Bank type shtick here, and the whole 7 days in advance thing is kind of silly in my opinion. Just a championship opportunity is a championship opportunity. Like creating your own parameters around it's a little bit tedious to me, but it is interesting to think, if he does end up coming out on top there, how he will do it, and obviously adds more attention to an argument. And I think it's interesting how Ospreay and Davis have just like a knockout drag match here that we're probably going to get into not too far away from Wembley as well, and these two are just killing each other. Didn't know if it was necessarily needed, but the main event for All In, or Wembley's coming, one way or another. How we get there seems to be more interesting than I speculated.
Yeah, definitely so. Okay, the first of my few gripes this week is now. Willow Nightingale, the Brawling Bird, they took on Mercedes and Divine Dominion. No problem with that. My problem is the finish here. Obviously, Willow picks up the victory. She pins Mercedes. But wouldn't it have been, because we know that's happening at All In. That is a lock. It doesn't make a difference. That is definitely happening. What we don't know that's happening yet, and I think has been confirmed now, is the Brawling Birds versus Divine Dominion. So wouldn't the finish of this match have been better to have a Windsor or Hater pin one of Divine Dominion? Because then they've got an argument to say, we've just pinned your damn tag champs. We deserve the opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, the match obviously needed to happen, but like you said, the outcome was a little bit futile because, like, ultimately, what kind of enables this storyline to move forward and this program to move forward? Like, it doesn't really justify its own existence. And I had a lot of the same gripes around this show as you did, and this was one of mine as well. Because I mean, just why not just give the win to them if we already know the outcome at the end anyway? Like, you and I both know how booking works. We know certain people have to win certain weeks, and someone's got to get a win here, someone's got to win there. Or maybe there's an unpredictability factor that they were trying to add to it, maybe to show that, Willow can pin Monet, but I think we all kind of already knew that anyway, so that felt
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, I was a bit figgy with the finish, but look, the Brawling Birds will probably go over anyway, and that will be the end of it at Wembley. And whether Willow or Mercedes go over, my thing is if Fekler was champ, I would have expected Mercedes to go over. I'm not too sure now. We'll have to see how these next few weeks pan out before we get to. I mean, obviously we've got to do all in predictions, so hopefully Bandito's in there somewhere at some point, so I get another victory out of that one. But right, Cole Fletcher, Speedball Mike Bailey International Championship. This was great. I love this. Um,
Matt,
the what? Yeah, without a doubt. The one dart into the barricade was sick. I mean, that looked absolutely awful. Fletcher, unsurprising. Oh, no, actually, we thought we could have seen Speedball win this, so maybe a little bit surprisingly, Fletcher picked up the win. But it's
that
the
was
aftermath.
that was the magic of this match, is that Speedball
Yeah,
made you believe for a moment that it could have happened.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, agreed. But it was after that match when there was a bit of a stare down between Fletcher and Okada. And that's kind of where we're leading to All In, and this is going to implode. And I'm all here for it. I think this is going to be great between Okada and Fletcher.
Oh, this is the best Fletcher's looked in quite some time. And, I always knew it was there. I never doubted that, Fletcher was still that pedigree of a performer. But, Bailey made him look like $1,000,000 and vice versa. I think these two had a lot of chemistry. I think I gave this match 4 stars. It was the highest match I had rated for the night. I think I gave the event in totality 3.5. But yeah, this was match of the night for me. I thought Fletcher just looked like a true heavyweight. Bailey was selling his ass off. It was spots galore. I thought the gear was sick for both of these guys. And then the post match stuff. One thing about the AEW pay per views, man, is that you're going to see two of the best just going at it. And the thought of Fletcher and Okada going at it with absolutely no constraint, just complete reckless abandon is just pretty much all you could ask for out of the sport. And I think this was the best outcome possible for a TV match, and the post match stuff is the best possible outcome in regards to booking, because I just want to see these two go at it.
Turn it over. Do you add Takeshita there in there, or do you leave it as a single?
I that was where we were headed like a month ago, right? I
Mm.
think I'm a little bit more towards it not being a triple threat, but at the same time, I'm more like 60-40 on that right now. 60% Okada, Fletcher, and 40% triple threat. But, Takesha's going to have to kind of emerge here, at least a little bit in order for me to kind of that ratio.
Got 3 weeks, so that ratio may change in those 3 weeks. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. Another six-person tag was next. This was Mystico, Jericho, or sorry, the Heart of the Lion, or I'm not even going to try and pronounce what it was. Something De Leon.
But yeah, continue.
Yeah, exactly. And Darby Allin versus the Don Callis family. I did find it funny how they were booing Mystico and cheering the other one, Hechericho, whatever his fucking name is. I can never pronounce his name right in this. This was okay. I mean, look, I think it was just like, I didn't say filler as such. I didn't see, the only reason I saw this match on there was because there was two Mexican people in there. And that's not being discriminated. That's just, this match would have been nowhere near a Dynamite. It was thrown together last minute just between, and that's where another gripe is of AEW. And I find it with pay-per-views as well. He'll just shove a match here, shove a match there. We said this, 6 matches limit for your pay-per-views. And this could have waited until next week. I don't really see the need to have it on there.
Adam, I don't want to stay on this too long, but for me, it's just like Jericho just trying to be in the mix, and it's like, what storylines are you perpetuating? Like who are you elevating? Who are you making better? Like, Ciampa didn't need the Jericho rub in any capacity. Like, we see him working with the crowd, we see him as a performer. Like, I'm sure it's awesome for both of those guys to work a program together, but I'm just looking at Jericho, and it's like, why are you bumping shoulders with Darby? Like, why are you even here? Like, what purpose does this serve? Like, it's like you're just trying to pop yourself. Like, it makes me absolutely laugh when people act like Punk is like narcissistic person who's into his own lore and his own universe. But meanwhile, Jericho, since the inception of AEW, is trying to tell these stories that seem like they're written for nobody but himself. And I'm not saying this was all about Jericho, but he stuck out like a sore thumb to me here.
I wasn't very impressed with it either, to be honest. Again, I thought it was needless, and you're right to say maybe this is just a whole thing for Jericho. I thought the whole plan with Jericho is to put him in there with people that he's comfortable with, but I couldn't really see him and Mystico mixing it up in a one-on-one really either. I can't see that ever happening because it just wouldn't be right. It was like before he went away the last time he was trying to go in there with like the commanders and that, and it was fucking awful.
Yeah, but it's like this should have just been a singles match between Kevin Knight and Darby Allin. Like that's what this is about. Like, why the fuck else was anybody else in the ring? Like, and like I just to me, this just felt like a waste of TV time. You could have added more time to another match and given another match more space to breathe, and I feel like that would have been better utilization of it. Like, use Jericho in a meaningful way to me.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. Another one that I'm a bit skeptical about. This was Persephone and Chris Statlander. Persephone did pick up the win on this. Hikaru Shida attacked Statlander. We're seeming to be heading towards All In, perhaps with Maya World versus Persephone versus Statlander versus Shida for the TBS Championship. My problem with that is Persephone's the CMLL champion. I'm right. I'm right in thinking that she is the champ. Is she the champ?
But we should know that. Like, that should be kind of an important thing to push on television, don't you think? Like, I think that
Yeah.
don't know that is kind of concerning. And to me, you had some nice things to say about Persephone last week. So did I. But this was
Mm.
another kind of head scratcher. It was just kind of over before I could even really realize what I was supposed to care about. Like, did this feel uninspired to you? I know I sound pessimistic for someone who gave this Dynamite a 3.5, but still, this was something to me where I feel like I should be elevating a lot of the women involved, and I still don't feel like I really know anything about them.
I feel as if like this was a prime example of what you just said. Like this, put the other match as a single, or not even have it on the card, the match before this, and give this one more time. So that with Persephone and Statlander have been feuding for some time. Sheeta and Statlander have been feuding for some time. That's kind of set. Get that. I think Statlander come out and help Maya World the other week. But my other gripe with it is if and I'm sure I'm right, and Persephone is the CMLL champion. Why is she going after a secondary championship in AEW?
Exactly. Like, if these are between, like, and I know WWE programming does this all the time. Like, they
Hmm.
throw women that are feuding together into feud. Do this with the men too. Like, it's just a way to get everybody on the card. But it's like
Hmm.
a roster is deep enough to where you don't have to do this. You can just
Yeah.
put something on the back burner. We don't have to get everything in on every episode of Dynamite. Some programs just end up feeling like fodder because of it, and I hate to see that.
Yeah, I don't like it either. It's one of those ones again. And we say this sometimes even at the pay-per-views. Yeah, that was that was another thing. So yeah, that is another issue that we've had. But look, we'll move on from there. That is another talk for another day. Now another gripe. I know it's going to be harsh. I know that I feel as if I'm griping a lot on this, but it's rightfully to do. The demand. When did they win the trios? Was it last week, the week before?
Oh my God, Adam. I hated this. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. Because, a lot of things that you and I said, good and bad, last week came to fruition this week. And I promise this is related to what you're saying.
Mm,
Listeners, stay with us. We were talking last week, and this is one of my biggest notes, is that you and I were kind of talking about how Hangman was kind of in La La Land and how, it's like, what is his path back to the main event? And like, everything he's doing feels like just like some kind of useless side quest and a meaningless detour. You put the titles on those guys and then have them job out to some made up trio, what, a week or two later?
yeah.
What kind of decision is that? It felt like it was just to get a pop here. Am I wrong?
I just felt like this was kind of like a thing for Adam Page because they kind of shot him in the foot here because Adam Page we would know was a main event talent. He was the world champion and now he can't go for the championship. They've got to give him something to do. And they just threw together Page, Bandito, and Brody. And like it would just felt like a whole clusterfuck there. And then it just feels like it gives Hangman something because they kind of backed him into a corner because he can no longer go for the AEW World Title.
That's a skill issue. That's a user by Tony. I think when you're backing like a problem you created, then costing or being at the expense of other talent, like Ricochet and those guys, like what they needed something here, and they're just kind of now, unless this is going to be like a hot potato 50-50 kind of thing. you kind of just DOA'd them. Like, like where do you go next with this? Or like when they were dancing in the ring, dude, I know, like I said, wrestling's supposed to be fun, but at the same time, like, they don't look like they take these guys seriously. And that's
Hmm.
kind of lame to me. And that trio, I don't really think are necessarily a comedy act, even though they can be at times. Like I said, there's I don't know. I just wasn't a fan about how they handled this whole thing, and I don't want to speak too soon, too critical of it too soon, but I just still wasn't a big fan of how that whole thing played out, and it very much tied into your argument last week of them kind of not knowing what to do with Hangman, and like my whole thing is like that doesn't mean just go mess up other plans and other divisions. It doesn't seem like there is much of a plan with Hangman. Is that fair to say at this point?
Yeah, because you can't go for the one thing that they had him on beforehand. It was like, what do you do with him? What now do you do? Where's he ceiling? Does he? And I've said this about MJF. Does he get into the Continental Classic somehow and win that? And that's kind of their get out of jail for making him do the Cody in many ways.
I just think that you could try to tell a new story with this whole keep him out of the title thing, but like just randomly roping him in with a tag team and then throwing him the trios titles on him on literally a moment's notice. I mean, we saw him teased for Collision. It wasn't really advertised well. He's randomly talking to Osprey, and now he's with it doesn't seem like there's much of a sense of direction with the character, and it's like you can lean on talent like Copeland because he's an established name, and Heyman
Mm.
is, but you don't want to do this too long because then that's how you become an afterthought. So just a little food for thought.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, anyway, the good, the bad, and the ugly, they're called, won the trios championship. I think Bandito even showed to prove that he wasn't the ugly one because last week they were having a bit of a. Brody was like, "Well, am I the ugly one then?" And then Bandito took off his mask and showed him why he's not ugly, and so it looks like Brody's the ugly one in this. My question, quickly though, where does Buddy Matthews fit into this when he comes back?
Does he?
I don't know. That's the thing.
Like if he does, like I just don't like. Do they turn on Hangman? Like does then what happens with Bandito? Like I'm sure they could rectify this all with one episode of Dynamite, but I'm just watching it and I'm just kind of like, who is this for? What purpose does this serve? Other than to get
Mm.
a pop in Mexico. And I hate when stuff is done for the sake of a pop because it kind of removes this the sports like aspect of AEW for me. And like I said, the other guys involved in this program deserve a little bit more than they're getting here. And I don't think you should just do stuff for the sake of doing it, especially when you're working with talent that isn't necessarily as over as you are. Like you're
Mm.
supposed to be elevating, the other guy, not the other way around. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe Buddy Matthews comes back. They brutalize Hangman. The whole cowboy shtick and the cowboy, good, bad, and ugly referential stuff. Like I said, I guess it's just not for me.
No, well, we'll find out what happens in due course. But yes, we have new trios champions again in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Main event was the Mexico City street fight between Davis and Osprey. I loved the match, but again, I have a slight gripe with this, and it was more from a safety of a wrestler standpoint. Um, there was a part of this match where Will Osprey, I mean, power drove Mark Davis on the apron, and it looked like at the time maybe he suffered some form of stinger, I don't know. But the referee ends up pushing Mark Davis back in the ring so that he doesn't, so he beats the 10 count. You could clearly see like a visible knock. My view is, and again, I know maybe people may be sort of saying, well, you're soft or whatever. If he's legitimately hurt or he's got a legitimate stinger, the referee's job is to count to 10 or count to 3 or or ring the bell for the tap out. If he's not moving or he's not physically able to get in that ring, call for the fucking bell. They done it with Osprey a couple of months ago when he come back, and Mark Davis done it to him. He got left on the outside ring and he lost my count out. Why did they feel the need to push Davis back in the ring where potentially jeopardizing someone who has already been injured quite a few times already since coming over to AEW?
Not just that, this entire thing was just unnecessary. Like,
Mm.
what storyline is this propel? I might have to bump. I don't know. I have this episode of Dynamite at a 3.5 because I felt like it was still a fun card
Hmm.
overall, invigorating. Not quite a 4-star feel. Like I said, big rating systems guy. But, I, I didn't like this match. I didn't like the way it was booked. I didn't like the way it was officiated. I didn't really like the finish. You got a guy who you need for Wembley at this point, and you're having him do this crazy backyard wrestling shit for what? Like, what purpose does this serve towards the storyline? Like, I could understand if, maybe Osprey was still in the Death Riders and, like, they were coaching him up, quote unquote, and, he needed a gritty win to kind of prove to Moxley and company that he was, on that upward trajectory and worthy of the past. But we're not there anymore. We're close to Wembley. And this just kind of felt like, you know, unnecessary risk. And like I said, a word I used a little while ago, Adam, was sport.
Mm.
And the reason that I look forward to Omega and Osprey is because I know that's two of the very best in their sport. And I want them at 100% going at each other. And taking unnecessary risks like this in matches like this that really don't mean anything other than a cheap pop and some ratings, I just don't really see the purpose of it. This is something that could have went to someone else. This is something that could have been used for something else. Like, I don't think Osprey needs to wrestle all that much. Maybe going into Wembley, like I said, the stage is set. That's not really a match you have to sell much. But I still don't even really understand how this sells that match. This felt like its own weird, unnecessary detour on the way to Wembley, and I don't really understand why it was booked. And when it comes to the safety of both professional wrestlers here, I don't think that AEW handled this very well. You said there's an injury history at hand here. I just don't really understand what anyone was thinking in this situation. It just felt completely unnecessary. I know I keep saying it over and over again, but I'm watching and I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, why put Osprey in a position to get injured? Why put Mark Davis in a situation like that where he's clearly exhibiting signs of someone who is not well? And ultimately, even if all things go off with it without a hitch, who does this help, and what does this do for the program? And the answer is nothing. So this was really a unusual decision, I thought, by AEW. But
Yeah,
then again, Adam, is it an unusual decision? Because there are a lot of matches that we've talked about since I've been back on the show where it's just like, why is this happening? I guess it's happening just to happen. But I guess my question is, why have you put Osprey in this position to begin with, or Davis for that matter?
I think that while they done it well, I suppose Osprey needs to get that victory over Davis after when he come back. Davis beat him, albeit by count out. But I suppose the way of looking at it is Osprey's trying to get kind of push everything that he needs. Maybe he felt that he needed to beat him in order to go to Wembley with a clear conscience, knowing that he can pull the trigger on a wrestler. Maybe that was it. But from a health and safety point of view, like even the move where he got dropped on the chairs, like well, he's just come back from a neck injury, and like I know
Yeah,
we criticized him.
maybe
Yeah,
once a year, if that. Like
yeah,
this is like a Hangman. Like this stuff is tailor made for rivalries that are personal, not just a simple loss. Like
mm.
just literally a simple. You said what, a count out loss is what it was.
I'm pretty. I was like the referee stoppage, I believe it was.
Either way, like, is that warranting a hidden blade with barbed wire on your arm? No. Was that warranted in a feud where Hangman and Swerve are going into each other's homes and it gets personal? But it's just like kind of a tone deaf thing for Tony and everyone who's booking this to do, because it's just kind of like, is this really earned? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I was a little, especially at that point. I mean, beforehand, yeah, okay, fine. But when that happened, and you could visibly see he's hurt, or at least not quite in the right space, just count him out and let it be done with it. I know it's a street fight, right? But he still had to answer a count, right? I think.
To do all this gimmicky shit of using barbed wire and
Mm,
all extracurricular things, like if anything, just do like some blood sport type shit and just have you guys go at it with minimal stoppage and just
mm,
show that Osprey, if need be, can tap in and go into a place inside of himself where he can keep going beyond what a normal person can do. Show that he has that within himself. I don't think you need to use all these
mm.
extra things to get you there. I think you just really should have done a typical shoot type match, but they decided to go to the gimmicky route. The crowd did love it, but I guess it's just another instance where I didn't really think it was all that necessary.
Well, worst case, if you did push him in, why didn't you just say to Ospreay, look, I think he's hurt, go home, let him hit the hidden blade without the barbed wire and get the pin?
Yeah,
Simple, isn't it? Yeah.
have him like brutalize him after the match. Just, and I know that's a heel thing. Like we've seen Ospreay stick, you know, Pac last week. That wasn't exactly a babyface thing to do by any means. But like I said, just there's ways you can make him look tough without having to do all this gimmicky stuff. But that is pro wrestling at its root. And I am higher on this AEW or this episode of Dynamite than I sound. But this was just one of the probably questionable decisions on the card on my part too. And that was actually one of the big spear points on my notes was Ospreay versus Davis, unsafe and unnecessary.
Yeah, there we go. That is what it is. But that was Dynamite from Mexico. I think next week we're going to get more in. I know they did do a little bit of sort of stuff for All In, but I think next week we're really going to start to see this ramp up. I think this was more of a special, as you said, like a Saturday night's main event type one-off show, which they've done very well for the most part. So I think next week it will ramp up for that. And look, we'll be back here next week for some more stuff as well. But yeah, look, man, it's been great talking as always, Parker. I look forward to our chat. We'll talk about the Continental Cup next week for sure and get our feelings on that.
We've been on a roll predicting some of this stuff, might I add. Kind of forecasting a lot of things have been happening on programming, and I wouldn't necessarily say a lot of them have been obvious either. So as this heats up, as the summer kind of closes out, I'm gonna be interested to see what else comes to fruition and what else we are completely wrong about. But I hope you enjoy the holiday, brother. Obviously, you got some business to take care of, and so do I. So I think we should bid the people do and catch up on Dynamite next week.
Yep, and follow us HTT Buckle everywhere. But until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe. Goodbye.